your titles, and then as you speak or anything subsequent, just call you by your first names. I hope that's good for everybody. And yeah, the only thing is I'm joining from a not usual laptop. So Serge, the best thing would be for me is if you can just WhatsApp me the message that you think would be appropriate to ask, just as a backup.
Okay.
It should be fine, but I'm on a Mac. I'm not normally on Macs and I don't want to mess anything up. But other than that, I'm all set, excited to get this launched.
One last check with Sarah, whom she couldn't hear us. Can you hear us now just fine?
Perfectly.
Awesome.
Finally, I managed. Great.
Excellent.
Hi,
Great.
Sarah.
Serge and I will stop our videos now and we'll be in the back. And I'm about to start. We'll then wait for you to, the recording will start, Laurel, and the live streaming. So about 10 seconds before really welcoming everybody.
Okay, so wait 10, yeah? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. We're going to get started in a moment. We're really glad to have you joining us for the launch of this e-course, Applying Integrated Policy Approaches to Accelerate the SDGs. Welcome. Just give us 1 or 2 moments as everyone comes into the room. So colleagues, we are here for the launch of an e-course, a very exciting one that many of us in the UN system have been working on for some time. This is a course designed for broad use by many different types of colleagues, from policy practitioners, UN personnel, and others, to really put the practical skills in your hands to move forward the SDGs with integrated approaches. So we're going to get started. And what I would ask from the beginning is we'll do a little run through of our agenda today. My name is Laurel Patterson. I work at UNDP and I lead our integration, our SDG integration portfolio. I'm going to hand over first to UNDP's Associate Administrator, Mr. Haliang Xu. I will be telling you rapid fire a little bit about the course after that. And then we're going to move to 2 different sets of discussions. First, from our partners at the Staff College and from UNICEF, Dr. Jafar Jaffen and Dr. Vidya Ganesh, both of them have been really critical in creating this course. They'll tell you about what's important in it and what's important to them. And then we have country perspective. So we're really delighted to have Nelson Mufa, who's the resident coordinator in South Africa, Sarah Ferrer Olivella, she's the resident representative in Colombia for UNDP, and Dr. Vivi Yulatwati, she's the deputy minister for Maritime Affairs and Natural Resources in Indonesia. She is also the head of the National SDG Secretariat. We will give as much time as we can for interaction, questions and answers, and then we move forward with the course. So we hope we'll be able to encourage all of you to sign up and get moving with that as well too. So without further ado, I hand over to Mr. Haliang Xu, Associate Administrator for UNDP. Haliang, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Laurel. And welcome everyone to this launch of this e-course on applying integrated policy approaches to accelerate the 2030 agenda. As time is short, I would just say welcome to everyone and all protocols observed. And also to save time, I will just mention 3 things very quickly. First, we all know that this year is the midpoint of the 2030 agenda. And in a few days' time, there will be an SDG summit in New York for member states and all partners in development to take stock of the SDG status, progress status, and recommit ourselves to achieve SDGs by 2030. So this is a moment for reflection, but also for action. Secondly, we all know that the issues today we're dealing with are very complex. They are interconnected. No single ministry, no single agency can deal with any of these issues alone. So it will require integrated, collaborative approach for us to achieve results at scale and with the speed within the time limit that we have. So the third point and the last point is that to do so, it will require everyone, all partners in government, in the UN and outside, to be aware of the need to have this integrated approach, but also to have the ability, the knowledge and the tools, the systems to do so. And this is what this course is about. And the course is an effort of joint effort by a number of agencies, UNDP, UNICEF, FAO, ILO, and the UNFPA, together with the UN staff college. So this is what this event is about. I hope this provides an impetus to our joint effort to achieve the SDGs, to achieve the goals in the second half of this match. Thank you very much. Over to you, Laura.
Thank you so much, Mr. Haliang Xu. We're going to move to show you a little bit about what is in the course. I'm reminded by colleagues that 582 people have already signed up. Maybe that's you, maybe that's not you yet. So let us tell you what we have planned in the course itself. All the links are here as well too, for you to be able to get yourself signed up. So this initiative falls in the purview, as Haliang had mentioned, of something we've created called an Integrated Policy Practitioners Network. We have 9 different entities who are part of this effort. We have a series of knowledge cafes. We have a newsletter bulletin and a web space on our knowledge platform called Spark Blue to help connect experts, extremely practically, very hands-on. And we try wherever possible in the work of this network to also have different entities come together to present and discuss different elements, different considerations, different coalitions that are moving forward integrated policy approaches. In this case, the course very closely developed between UNDP and UNICEF with a lot of feedback from our colleagues in the IPP, and you see the 7 entities referenced there, and with the UN System Staff College. We'll hear more about that as well too. So this is hosted by the Staff College, it's interactive, it's self-paced, it doesn't cost you anything, and you can leave us feedback so that we can keep making this better. The course is a very important one for us in the UN system. So the UN has several learning journeys, learning opportunities for the SDGs. There's a very important learning course for UN staff and practitioners on the Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework. We have an overview of the SDGs course called the SDGs Primer, a very, very important one that provides a lot of detail on the background of the agenda, why the 17 goals, how they work together, and what it takes to deliver them. That's the SDG Primer. And now we have this course, which fits as part of these top 3 courses and learning journeys on integrated policy approaches to accelerate the SDGs. So the purpose and what brought us together on this course was to build from the SDG Primer itself, which, as I mentioned, provides a strategic overview into something that was more practical, more hands-on, more oriented to the people that in different parts of the world and in different organizations are taking the work forward themselves. Our audience is both UN policy practitioners and other advocates, anyone else that's interested in testing and trying out these approaches. As UNDP, we just launched an initiative on integrated insights last night. We spent a lot of time with member states and other UN partners talking about what it takes to accelerate implementation. And for me, I see this course very much as part of that. We need to take this up across fields, across countries, and we really hope that this is a very practical contribution to that aim. About 4.5 hours in terms of the overall time that it takes to complete the course. What we have in the modules is meant to walk you through with as much logic as possible both the concepts and then the practice of integrated policy. So we start with looking at how these are approached, what's the theory behind integrated policy approaches in the context of the 2030 agenda. And then from there, we get into how do we align? How do we assess the SDG alignment from different perspectives? How do we identify accelerators? And how do we enable both coherence and integration in different mechanisms across different issues? And certainly we give some examples of how that was done in response to COVID. The course itself includes videos, animations, a lot of examples, quizzes and checks boxes. So again, our effort across the board is to keep you engaged and make it as practical as possible so that you leave this course with something that you can immediately take into your work. You'll find that we will continuously come back to the course content. We will draw from the experiences of different colleagues who have taken the course or who are leading it in different ways. So we really want to keep this live and interactive. So as much as you have the course itself, as I mentioned in the beginning, you will also have the IPPN space. You see some of the links here as well too, so that you can deepen, connect, and hopefully refine what makes sense for you in your context to use these approaches effectively. There is a course certification, which we're very, very happy with as well. So a certification is based on completion of our 4 modules. It's signed by the 3 entities who are leading this particular initiative, UNDP, UNICEF, and the System Staff College. And that comes hopefully as an incentive and motivation to get all the way through all 4 modules. And let me take us now into a reflection on the course itself, why it's important. We are just days from the SDG Summit and of course moving towards the Summit of the Future, which is a summit planned for September 2024. So I'll welcome first Dr. Jafar Javan, the director of the UN Staff System College, to share his reflections. Jafar, the floor is yours and welcome.
Thank you very much, Laura. Dear colleagues, I'm really delighted to be speaking with you today. The UN System Staff College is happy to be a partner in this very important initiative and to host this valuable course on our e-platform. Our interagency mandate places the college in a special position when it comes to strengthening UN coherence and integration. Indeed, all our learning programs are designed to encourage the UN system to share insights, work together, and create synergies. We are a vibrant community bringing the UN system together to support countries in their search for effective solution to today's challenges. This course on policy integration is timely and perfectly in line with our approach. For decades, we have lived in a world of specialization, where ministries and departments looked at the challenges through the lens of their very particular expertise. Issues such as the economy, food security, climate, gender, and migration have been typically approached in silos. Now, however, we find ourselves in a world where progress is lagging. Instead of advancing, we are falling behind across many of the SDGs. Our challenge is to get much better at identifying the cross-cutting issues that will help deliver progress. We must get better at looking at ways to bring together different approaches for more effective and coherent results. This is where policy integration is emerging as one of the main ways to support countries in accelerating progress on the SDGs. The course we are jointly launching today will build a system-wide knowledge base on policy integration, giving concrete examples and introducing essential tools. It complements other UNSCC offerings like the SDG Primer, the UN Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework course, and the Policy Coherence and System Thinking course. Amid the current challenges to the SDGs and to multilateralism more broadly, we must continue to learn new skills and approaches. This course we believe, delivers on that imperative. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Javan. And we think it would be interesting for the audience joining us to really think through what are those intersections of the issues and challenges that they work on and that they're facing, and how do we identify where to act at their intersections, as Dr. Jafar was saying, so that we can make progress on multiple fronts. We're behind where we wanted to be. We're out of time. Nobody here needs to be told that. But this is a very interesting opportunity space that we hope the course also helps to elucidate a little bit. So let me hand over next to Vidya Ganesh. Vidya is the director of the Division of Data, Analytics, Planning, and Monitoring at UNICEF. She has worked on the SDGs from the beginning with us on many integrated initiatives in the past. So Vidya, it's great to see you, and the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody all around who have joined us. That in itself speaks a lot to the importance of for us coming together and trying to find joint solutions that are scalable and impactful. So really, I'm delighted at the strong interest in this event and the possibilities that this particular e-course can open up for all of us. So Dr. Jafar, thanks so much for that wonderful, inspirational your comments, which again, for me, it's like, I never get bored of being reminded of how important it is to continue to find system solutions that brings us all together to find common solutions. I say this because we conceptually think it's important and we strive towards it, but it's not so straightforward. So really, thank you so much for that very helpful scene-setting comments, as did Hao-Liang. So I just want to share my perspectives from two angles. To add to what has already been said, like why does policy integration matter? And give you some reflections when we come to addressing the issues for children, how again such an approach is critical. So I mean, it's not a surprise to anybody, but I think we continue to ask ourselves when we get up in the morning, how come we live in a world that is so full of paradoxes? What was it like 20 years ago, 30 years ago? We can't even remember anymore to some extent. So, we remember the good old days where we felt like, we were really advancing and we were progressing. We still are, it's not that. Yet, we find ourselves in a situation that in spite of that great unprecedented level of prosperity, nearly half of the world's population live in poverty, and children, unfortunately, are really bearing the brunt of the deprivation. We are releasing our report in a couple of days, and I must say, even for me working in UNICEF for so many years, I found it very sobering. And again, a couple of other paradoxes. Innovations and productions have been made, and there's enough food to feed everyone, yet 800 million experience hunger. We have made advances in technology, yet more than a third of people don't have access to the internet. We enjoy freedoms, privileges, conveniences, yet conflict and extreme weather event can change everything in an instant, like we're seeing these days. Economic uncertainty, crisis, climate change occur amidst lingering impacts of the pandemic, which are still unfolding. And we ask ourselves, if we were to face another pandemic again, are we going to come out of it better than we did with the last two, the Ebola and the COVID? And it is exasperating the inequalities. However, there is hope, and then I don't mean that in a philosophical way. I really do feel that we have the evidence and the knowledge of what works. Solutions are there, and with that now, with new technology, new types of data, emergence of AI, let's harness it well, and increase connectivity amongst others. And these will opportunities that have been unavailable to earlier generations. So we have game changers that we didn't have before. We just have to think differently about how these game changers help us to solve these problems that feels wicked and not. So therefore, this is where I think the policy integration really matters, to develop solutions across disciplines, across sectors, and really with a much better understanding of the root causes of poverty, inequality, and social inclusion, where Lauren just once again reminded, find that sweet spot, if I can add that word to your point about, where the integration really can. So let me start to wrap up by saying, we advance the well-being for children, right? And UNICEF is working with all the partners, civil society, and more importantly with communities and young children, and they really are telling us what challenges they face, but they're also telling us where the solutions are. And if you hear what the solutions that they're proposing, it's all about an integrated whole of society approaches, right? So I'll give you a simple example. It's a difficult problem, but it's a simple example to understand. So for example, we use integrated approaches in addressing the harmful practices of child marriage. So the projections are that if business continues as usual, it'll take another 300 years before we can end the child marriage, and that's our goal, right? So that's the SDG goals. And the drivers of this particular practice tend to be socioeconomic, which includes poverty and inequality, lack of access to quality education, limited life choices, as well as social norms, amongst others. So if you want to address these drivers in a coordinated, coherent way across all partners with community, we are definitely going to need integrated approaches, for which we need good, high quality, integrated policy solutions. Second example is data is another powerful integrator, which brings together actors and partners, and has already been mentioned. Data is a strong basis to develop high quality common country assessments that brings the UN system together to work on common solutions. So these are, I can go on, but I really am so excited that we now have yet another opportunity to engage and learn. And the e-course we're launching today is yet another concrete steps towards it. Do take the course, engage with it, and let us keep improving it. And most importantly, let's see how useful it is to at the country level. And I'm really eagerly looking forward to hearing the next set of panelists. So thank you very much. Enjoy and good luck.
Thank you so much, Vidya. Thanks for those examples as well, too, because I think, colleagues, this has really been our effort throughout the development of this course, our integrated policy practitioners network. It needs to make sense where we work. It needs to make sense against what people are experiencing every day. I think the theory, the vision of the SDGs, that North Star, we have it. That's not the question we're asking. The question we're asking is, how do we implement? And how do we do that strategically, effectively, as intelligently as we can in the second half? And that's really where we want to position this work and the conversation that will open next with some of our colleagues based in different countries. So I'll turn first to Nelson Mufal, who's the UN resident coordinator in South Africa, leading a lot of interesting work in this space. And then I'll hand over to Sarah Olivella in Colombia, and then to Dr. Vivi joining us from Indonesia. But first, Nelson, over to you. The floor is yours, and welcome again.
Thank you so much, and good morning, good day to all who are joining. And I stand on existing protocol, mindful of the limited time we've got as well. I think I should just really focus on trying to put on the table South Africa's own unique perspective with regards to advancing what we're talking about, which is integrated policy delivery. We've heard how this is at the core of the SDG agenda and the 2030 agenda for sustainable development. And this is something we've been grappling with in the South Africa perspective, because as part of the repositioning of the UN development system, we're also called upon to do integrated planning and integrated delivery. And of course, the planning comes with the policy making and advancing solutions that will help the country and the people of South Africa take forward their development aspirations. And we have, in this context, interlinked challenges around inequalities, around poverty, and around high unemployment, one of the highest rates in the world. So really, any offer that the UN system can put on the table has to help the country respond to this intractable challenges that they've been facing for decades now. It's also part of the apartheid legacy. So one of the things we've been trying to do, actually taking advantage of the preparations for the SDG Summit and a reflection with government as well and stakeholders about what is it that we need to do with regards to accelerating action towards the achievement of the SDGs and focusing on the interlinkages and also the multipliers, because I think that's very important. And the SDGs push diagnostics we work with UNDP on helped tremendously also in this regard and brought to the fore some of the things that we've already been working on and we were starting to take for granted. One of those is to look at the issue of how, if we focus on the energy access and transition pathway for South Africa, that could be something that will help move the needle on a number of other fronts, be it gender equality considerations, decent work, skilling of young people, the socioeconomic impacts of the lack of energy, but also the part that communities and stakeholders can play with regard to the transition to renewables and low carbon emissions. So this has forced the UN country team to go beyond its silos, to start thinking about how everything is interconnected. We had organized ourselves around our cooperation framework, had 4 strategic priority outcomes. Energy was not necessarily neatly packaged into any of the outcomes. One was on inclusive growth, one on human capital development and social transformation, one on governance, and one on managing the environment and building resilience. So, but the energy point relates to all of these aspects. And so we've set up, I think, cross-resorts group sort of matrix ways of working, bringing the whole UN country team together at different levels, first starting with the UN country team, then technical colleagues working on this, but even doing some strategic political work, all in an integrated manner, bringing the work of ILO, UNDP, UNODC, UNFPA, UNICEF, UN Women, even the World Bank that sits in our country team together to reflect about how the UN can put together a policy offer that really responds to the aspirations around the just part of the energy transition and energy access. Because if we focus on leaving no one behind and the just part, that brings in the social, the economic, the environmental, and even the political aspects of what we need to do in country. And so a lot of our work, I mean, in this context, has to focus on justice, social justice, especially because of the history of the country and the inequalities we're talking about. And also operating in an upper middle income country where resources to do your traditional development work are quite constrained. So integrated policy work that the government can also take seriously and see we're serious players that can think through and connect the dots for them and help break the silos. I heard recently in the discussion already the whole need for a whole of society and a cross-government approach to doing this. And the UN trying to do that deliberately and intentionally has helped to some extent. So we expect South Africa's, for example, SDGs acceleration commitment for the SDG Summit to touch on some crucial issues that highlight the importance of connecting the dots from a policy making point of view and policy delivery point of view that will help the country on tackling the issues of poverty, unemployment, and inequalities, particularly gender inequalities. And this is what we're pushing forward, and we expect to see some progress in that regard. The UN is working quite hard, of course, leveraging all the assets and knowledge we can bring to bear and making good progress in that regard. So we will see, I think, South Africa stepping forward as it's already doing with regards to the Just Energy Transition Partnership approach, but also looking at social protection through the lens of how do we ensure that particularly the female-led households who need social protection, who need to be unpaid care work that has to be, I think, taken more seriously, integrated into the formal payment social grant pathways, that this also helps, because of course, if we've realized if you touch the female-led households, that has a cascading effect as well on education and the well-being of children and food insecurity and employment itself, and also even on climate action and building resilience. So we're making good progress. This is some of the reflections we currently have, and we look forward to the contribution that this course can bring, because it's a struggle as part of the repositioning of the UN system for the UN to actually walk the talk. And we see that in as much as we do have the processes in place, the documents in place, the courses in place, a lot more of UN staff, particularly those who are working in country and practicing, need these sort of courses to be able to sit back and reflect and intentionally connect the dots around working together, planning together, monitoring together, and even communicating together. So I thank you all for this opportunity, and I look forward to supporting this going forward.
Thank you so much, Nelson. I mean, fantastic and wonderful to walk through an example that you gave in a just energy transition, also social protection, female-headed households, unpaid care. And of course, those two meet in different ways and intersect, that can be quite powerful for the country and for progress. I also really appreciate, I'm sure for many of you who are listening into this conversation, we all understand planning in sectors and working in strategic pillars and so on. But what an incredible experience of the South Africa country team trying to find what cuts across, what intersects. And for me, I really think this is where we need to rethink the SDGs, or at least how we're implementing the SDGs in the second half. It is never meant to be a list of SDGs, 17 boxes. It's a network, it's a set of bridges. And those bridges, I would argue, are not even at the goal level. You see this tremendous interaction at the target level and in the indicators where we're measuring progress and getting better and better. Are we there? No, we know the data gaps are real too. You'll hear all about that next week at the summit, but it's getting better and better. And I think part of what we're trying to unlock in this course, as Nelson was just reflecting his last points there, we need to also be able to challenge our own assumptions of where we think intersections might be, where we think multipliers might be. And when we really get into the SDG indicators and the SDG target, when we utilize analytics differently, it not only challenges the way we think about the issues, it challenges the way we think about our own portfolios. And that's what we need to be doing at this point. So really congratulations, Nelson, to your team. And thank you so much for joining us today. We'll be keen to keep in touch with you as the work moves forward. And I'll invite next Ms. Sarah Ferrer-Olivella, who is the UNDP country director, who's the UNDP res rep in Colombia, to take the floor next. Sarah, good to see you. Over to you.
Thank you, Laurel. I'm very pleased to join the launch of this course on policy integration for SDGs, which in fact, Nelson just reinforced how timely it is and how needed it is at the country level. I believe for the UN agencies at country level, but also for governments themselves, policy integration is not a nice thing to have. It is a must. It is a must if we are to lift this agenda and really accelerate the pace to achieve it. The UN reform, when it was launched, it already had at its heart the need for this policy integration and make sure that countries were equipped with these tools. Evidence is critical to see all these interlinkages to take better decisions. What I wanted to do today with you is to share two examples from Colombia. Colombia, in our strategic cooperation framework, the government requested specific technical assistance in the accelerating what tools we could put in place to accelerate the pace to achieve the SDG. And the example I wanted to share with you is a tool we developed together with the Ministry of Planning and the Ministry of Finance called Policy Priority Inference Tool, which is part of our efforts as a country level of the Integrated National Financing Framework. This is a joint initiative that we have with UN Women, UNICEF, and UNDP. And what we have done is, for instance, in this policy priority inference tool, we have analyzed 20 years of budget data and more than 90 SDG indicators. And what we have seen is how these indicators behave over the years. And we have used these basically to inform our new development plan, 2023-2026. It's a tool because it assists to see how predict or forecast, if you like, what are going to be the future trends if you continue investing the same way. And basically what it lets you see is the interrelation of various indicators. What we did find that to affect change, for instance, is not always a matter of increasing budget spending. What is more effective is how you redeploy basic budget lines and the spending is more efficient and better allocated. And this is critical for many governments, including the Colombian government, because in times of very limited fiscal space and many competing priorities following the many different crises that countries are overcoming, you really have to use resources widely. The other thing we learn using this tool is that you have better chance of affecting change if you concentrate on budget-sensitive topics to catalyze SDG accelerator. For instance, we noticed that breastfeeding support, addressing gender-based violence, providing learning spaces, common learning spaces, treating infectious disease, ensuring rural water supply, rehabilitating forests, formalizing labor, or upgrading industries for sustainability. These very sensitive indicators, they really behave in a different way and really could have the potential to transform the outcomes. This is an example of how an analysis of seeing the different variables, evidence that we have on how a budget behaves, no matter how many resources you allocate, but if you choose widely, you can have different outcomes. Now, the challenge that we face at the current time is how then you transfer these skill sets of methodologies and learning how to program these languages and SDG indicators so government officials have this know-how and can actually own it and incorporate it in their day-to-day business. Another example I wanted to share with you as part of the integrated national financing framework is the SDG tagging methodology. Over the last 4 years, we also tag 4 years of national budgets. And why this is important? Because we wanted to understand how the resources were being deployed. And then we compare it with SDG expending of the government over the last 4 years. And you see, one thing is the priorities on these financing flows, where they are located, where the politicians, where the policymakers, where the international commitments, you commit to the agendas, and yet the budget allocation, and more importantly, the expenditure does not necessarily speak to the commitments. So I wanted to highlight this because understanding the budget flows of a country, whether they are private or public, whether they are, domestic or international, putting all of these in the mix are really critical to understand what are the acupuncture points that you can touch to create or influence really the course of the country to achieve the SDGs. I just wanted to wish you all a great course, and also I believe that this course provides us a great opportunity to strengthen our collective capacity for policy integration as a UN family, but also more importantly, as the broader development community, because development community has to be the whole community and not just a few. Thank you very much.
Sarah, thank you so much. It's great examples. And I think this is also an audience that would love at a different point to hear more about the tools that you've been using and how that's been able to pull out some different insights, even within contexts that are constrained fiscally. And colleagues, although that is not something that we have built into this course, the point Sarah raises is extremely important. We are operating, many countries operating in spaces that are highly constrained from a fiscal perspective. Some of the work at UNDP we've been doing recently has also looked at growth pathways for countries. And we've asked questions, provided new projections around how carbon intensive those pathways are, how inclusive are those pathways. And again, this work that we're putting forward here, this course opportunity, it's an opening into some of those bigger questions as well too. And how do we navigate with those bigger constraints in mind? How do we select choices that are lowering carbon intensity of our pathways, that are more inclusive? And how do we find, as Sarah is saying, these acupuncture points, even in contexts which are fiscally constrained? It isn't to suggest that we should not continue the advocacy that happens by the UN and many others on the global financial architecture reform. But here again, what we think is so important is that we're able to move forward today the best we can in imperfect situations. This is the heart of, really making acceleration work for as many countries as we can. So Sarah, thank you very much for putting those challenges and examples also on the table. I will turn next to Dr. Vivi Ulaswadi. She's our last speaker before we'll go into some questions. Dr. Vivi, it's good to see you. So Dr. Vivi is the Deputy Minister for Maritime Affairs and Natural Resources, but she's also the head of the National SDG Secretariat, a tremendous champion for the SDGs and innovation around it. Dr. Vivi, I understand you also have a couple of slides that you'll show, and we're really delighted to see you today. Is that right, Dr. Vivi, or did I get that wrong?
Hi, Laura. It's really a pleasure to meet you and also dear panels as well as participants. If it is possible, can I share the slides?
Absolutely.
It's still, okay. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, I think Indonesia also shared the same experience as well as challenges with other countries. So after COVID, we have to prepare our long-term development plan 2025, 2045, and we have to develop the economic transformations. For us, economic growth serves as an enabler for the SDGs in the short term, while also over time, the SDG agenda itself becomes a catalyst for inclusive and low carbon growth pathway. So as you may see here, after COVID, Indonesia growth trajectory already back on track, but it's not enough. We want to grow higher, but clean. So of course, the catalyst to be inclusive and low carbon growth pathways need a new ways of doing the businesses in the development context. So that's why we discussed with the UNDP and of course and other colleagues in Indonesia side, and at that time I saw in the web actually about the SDG integrations and want to have this kind of analysis or diagnostic for Indonesia. So that's why we learn more about the simulator built by UNDP and use this diagnostic to do for Indonesia context. So starting from there, we compiling the target SDGs data, and of course using some data from the UN Stats API. Following this methodology, the simulator classifies the indicators into 5 categories: the substantial progress on track, and also the ones that fair progress but acceleration needed, and also some other that are limited or no progress and or deterioration. So all of these, the intention is really to utilize the limited funding as well as the time. So this is the result. Based on the analysis of the SDG push for Indonesia, we use the SDGs 11 as an entry point to integrate the policy intervention that could leverage the SDGs progress. Especially the rest of the SDG goal are include SDG 1, 2, 3, 8, 10, 12, 13, 16, and 17, which was articulated in Indonesia's latest VNR. This will, we believe that it could contribute to achieve the SDGs. Currently, significant progress has been made in the goals 6 and 11 on access to water and sanitation, hand washing facilities, safe public transportation, water resources, and open green space, respectively. So looking at the analysis of the synergies and trade-offs, the SDGs 11 has more than 20 synergy links with other targets shared across 14 of 16 SDGs. Thus getting this indicator back on track for 2030 through bold and innovative development policies, we believe could help elevate many other indicators as well, some of which are also currently lagging. This is the ones that we found building from our national priorities, following the pathway reflect policy investment with the most potentials of the accelerations for Indonesia, particularly in target 3.8, target 8.5, and then also 11.1 and target 16.6. And this is some explanations for each SDG interlinkages of each target. And we could direct use this what we call as a background study for developing our long-term development 2025-2045. And also we are now preparing for the midterm development plan 2025-2030. And of course, it's really helped for us, not only Ministry of Planning, but also we can discuss with related sectors. This is also the other examples of each indicators. This is the scenario based on the SDGs push. We could use the 48 integrated accelerators in the area of the government program in the social protections, green economy, as well as the digitalizations. This is only the examples for the goal 3. I believe, yes, this is for the children under 5. You can see here, if we use the SDGs push scenario, we could accelerate the achievement of the SDGs. This is the modeling about understanding the potential impact of the drivers using the micro and macroeconomic framework. So basically, the inputs using the scenario from some documents, and then based on this model, we could see the output as well as the outcome. So this is really help us to develop the macro planning, in which can be, I mean, the long-term development will be enacted as a law in the Indonesia context. And by doing this, it could be a basis for sectors as well as the local governments to develop further their own plan. So this is the example, I mean, the summary that Indonesia could achieve the SDGs focusing for these targets within the next 7 years. The other things that we also do is revise our roadmap using almost the same logic, the interlinkages, but at the indicators level. And this is, of course, through through inclusive process engaging sectors as well as other stakeholders. This is the result. Yeah, the result is almost consistent with the results from the SDGs push, in which we have to prioritize sectors in relate with health, governance, water and sanitation, education, inequality, energy, as well as housing and environment. In the roadmap, we also revised the financing gap, in which showed that in the previous roadmap, the gap of the financing is $1 trillion but before the COVID, and now it's increasing to $1.7 trillion. This is, I mean, all of these SDGs interlinkages really help us to also accelerate other commitment in the localizing SDGs, not only in the finance for sure, and of course, to accelerate in the collaborations with other stakeholders. Thank you very much.
Dr. Vivi, thank you so much. It's so impressive to see the work that Indonesia is leading. Extremely detailed colleagues, extremely rigorous, and a real effort. I think some of you have commented in the chat as well too, to utilize the strongest evidence base possible, mixed methods, right? Combine them together in ways that really help us think through budgeting considerations, implementation considerations, etc. So thank you very much, Dr. Vivi. We're in the final minutes, colleagues, and what I wanted to do at this point is reflect on two questions that have come up in the chat. And Nelson, if you don't mind, I'll put the first question to you and to Sarah. It's an interesting one. And then Dr. Vivi, I want to come back to you on one as well too. But for both Nelson and for Sarah, there's questions that are coming through, I think in the spirit of leaving no one behind, that are asking questions about how local actors are part of the SDCF. How can they be part of the rollout of these integrated approaches? How can they access these kinds of materials and so on? So Nelson, maybe I'll pass the floor to you first and then to Sarah. How do we really ensure that a stakeholder base beyond the UN perhaps is engaged in both the thinking, conceptualization, and implementation of this work? Over to you, Nelson, first.
No, thank you for that. And it's a very, I think, pertinent question. In our approach here, everything is guided by the mantra of leaving no one behind. And that means including local stakeholders, first in the assessment that we had to do with regards to the common country assessment, to the consultations around the preparations of our cooperation framework, and then also the engagement with government, even right now, with regards to its national SDGs acceleration commitment. So including intentionally local stakeholders is something that we take very seriously, and we advance with the full support of government and other stakeholders here in this context. In South Africa, there's this consultation is the way forward, and inclusion. You cannot do any other thing beyond that for it to have any credibility. So there is a social compacting process, which the country is going through as well. They have formal structures, organized groups, and also informal structures, and the unions are very influential here, so we have to do that as well. But also looking at the just energy transition pathway, which I spoke about. The only way you could take forward the just part of the transition is if you're engaging with and leveraging the contribution of local communities. And so we are also doing that. And the UN's role in there is trying to ensure that we're convening, we're engaging, we're helping communities to be able to be part and parcel of the policy making process and the validation of that as well. Going right up to Komati and the community around Komati, which is the decommissioned coal power plant, for example, and making sure that voices of communities are included, working with the World Bank that is funding that as well to be able to do that. ILO has a very rich and dense history in the country. So the UN is taking advantage of ILO and its connections with the unions and the grassroots here to be able to do some of that work as well. And we're seen as trusted partners to advance some of that. So it is, I would say, something that we take very seriously. It's a responsibility we have to be able to help accompany particularly the local communities and those in rural spaces and the localization of the SDGs and the structures that the government is putting in place through what they're calling the district development model gives us an entry point to be able to just move beyond our offices in Pretoria and Johannesburg to go into the provinces and municipalities as well. But it's work in progress. I don't think we can say we're totally there and succeeding. There's always much more we can do and should be doing. And we're definitely in the right direction.
Thank you, Nelson. Sarah?
Yeah, just very briefly, I echo everything that Nelson said. You know, this is something that we do also in Colombia. But here, just I wanted to put up front Colombia's in a peace building process and reconnecting their development pathways for those who were left behind during the conflict. So there is a very deliberate attempt by the UN country team in building peace that sustainable development, human development is at the center. And for that, we really take a very specific focus on those communities who have been left behind and excluded from the development pathway. So just to say, in everything we do at all levels, we always have very much a focus on those communities excluded, affected by the conflict, but I wanted to bring the issue of intersectionalities. It's not the same a woman, Afro-descendants in the periphery and Colombia that the same woman in Bogota in the capital. What you have to overcome in terms of adjusting and targeting public policy, taking account of those voices whilst you develop that, are critical. I'm not going to be extended, but of course, I would love to continue discussing with all of you.
Thank you, Sarah. It's a fantastic point. So thank you for putting emphasis on it. Dr. Vivi, we just have 1 minute, but one of the things for, you know how this happens at the end of these webinars, but I don't want to miss the opportunity, Dr. Vivi, for you to share a little bit about the work that Indonesia is pioneering at local levels. And for colleagues that aren't aware, in Indonesia, there's more than 74,000 villages. And with some phenomenal efforts across from national, regional to local level, there is SDG planning. It is adapted to local needs, almost exactly, Sarah, in the way that you were reflecting just now. And of course, some real efforts to align, Dr. Vivi, those initiatives to measure them, very significant efforts at data collection, harmonization, and so on. So just wanted to give you a minute, Dr. Vivi, to maybe share a little bit, and I think it would be inspiration for others that are joining us today.
Yeah, 2 points about the localizing, and it is very related with the question with rural questions. In the SDGs, it is an opportunity to localize the global principles at the local level, up until village level. So now in the high-level political forum in July, we presented the SDGs village with the Minister of Village, and also somehow there is also an opportunity to globalize local values. So it's really works that makes them engage in the global context with the SDGs. The second point, I want to point out the impact. Impact in the SDGs mean measurable. So I keep talking to my colleagues here in Indonesia to improve our database and also improve our capacity in analysis. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. V. And the reality is that statistical gaps aren't just numbers, of course, they reflect people whose experiences we don't understand, we're not capturing, and therefore we can't respond, we can't be as effective as we would want to be in responding to different needs. So Dr. Vivi, thank you for that. Colleagues, this wraps up 9:01 Eastern time, not bad. And I really want to thank everyone for joining today. Thanks for all of our incredible speakers, really an interesting discussion. Let's build it forward. You find all of the details on the screen. Please sign up. Please join us in the Integrated Policy Practitioners Network. And to Nelson's point at the end, I mean, dialogue, discourse, consultation, these are the space we all need to be active in to keep conversation and discourse spaces like the one we've had today moving forward as well too. So thank you, everyone. I wish you a good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And that's all from us. Thank you to the speakers.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.